the Great Plague of London, death, survival, and the city's darkest days. The year 1665 began as any other in the sprawling city of London. Its streets were filled with merchants hawking their wares, noblemen parading in their finery, and labourers toiling from dawn till dusk. The city, though vibrant, was also burdened with poverty, overcrowding, and unsanitary conditions, fertile ground for the invisible terrors that often stalked humankind. Yet, few could have foreseen the catastrophe that was about to unfold. By the year's end, London would be forever changed, and nearly a quarter of its population would have perished in one of the most devastating outbreaks of disease in European history. The first reports of a strange and deadly illness emerged from the crowded parishes of London's poorer districts. At first, only a few individuals fell victim, developing fevers, experiencing unbearable pain in their limbs, and discovering strange, swollen lumps in their armpits and groins. Physicians and apothecaries puzzled over these symptoms, offering ineffective remedies of bleeding, herbal tinctures, and prayers. But as the days passed, the death toll climbed. Soon, entire families succumbed in the span of a week. Panic spread through the city, yet denial persisted. Many believed this was simply another passing illness. They could not have been more mistaken. As the disease tore through London's streets, local authorities implemented desperate measures to contain its spread. Households where illness was reported were sealed off, their doors painted with a stark red cross, accompanied by the chilling inscription, "Lord, have mercy upon us." Families trapped inside knew their fates were sealed. Few who entered these condemned homes ever emerged again. Neighbors whispered prayers while avoiding the marked houses, terrified that a single breath of contaminated air might spell their doom. The once lively streets grew quieter, replaced by an eerie stillness, punctuated only by the distant cries of the afflicted. In times of great calamity, there are always those who attempt to combat the forces of death. The so-called plague doctors became a common sight in the city, clad in long, wax-coated robes and their now infamous beaked masks. The masks were not mere eccentricity. They were stuffed with aromatic herbs, believed to filter out the miasma, poisonous air, thought to carry the disease. These doctors moved through the streets like spectres of death, wielding wooden staffs to examine patients from a distance. Some were trained physicians, while others were little more than opportunists profiting from despair. In truth, their efforts were largely futile. The disease continued its relentless march. As bodies accumulated, the city faced a grim and pressing challenge: how to dispose of the dead. Church graveyards overflowed within weeks, forcing the authorities to dig vast plague pits outside the city walls. These trenches became mass graves, filled hastily and without ceremony. Night after night, carts trundled through the streets, their drivers calling out in mournful tones, "Bring out your dead!" The living reluctantly carried their deceased loved ones, their grief overshadowed by the necessity of survival. The very air reeked of decay, and with each passing day, London's population dwindled further. As death spread through the streets of London, the wealthy sought safety far from the city. King Charles II and his court abandoned the capital for the countryside, as did many of the aristocracy and merchants who could afford to leave. But for the common people, the shopkeepers, the labourers, the beggars, there was no such refuge. They remained trapped within a city that had become a graveyard. The once thriving metropolis was now eerily silent. The hum of commerce and the chatter of daily life had been replaced by the tolling of church bells and the weeping of the bereaved. By the autumn of 1665, the plague began to wane, though thousands had already perished. But the final blow to the epidemic came from an unexpected source: the Great Fire of London in September 1666. The blaze, which consumed much of the city's old wooden structures, also destroyed the rats and fleas that had carried the disease. Though the fire was a disaster in its own right, it inadvertently marked the end of the plague's reign. In its wake, a new London would rise from the ashes. In the aftermath of the Great Plague and the Great Fire, London was forced to rebuild, not only its structures, but its very way of life. Urban planning improved, sanitation laws were enforced, and new medical knowledge emerged from the ashes of disaster. The plague had left an indelible mark on the city and its people, a reminder of the fragility of life and the resilience of humanity. The Great Plague of London was a tragedy, but from its depths emerged the first steps toward a healthier, more modern city.